Hello, welcome back to the NBA DFS Slate Breakdown for Wednesday, November 1st. We are back. Last time we did it, it was Monday. I placed 5th, almost had a takedown, but we were definitely on the right track with a lot of the stuff we were saying. So now we are back. We got a big 13-game slate. Now, before we get into it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us out a ton. Just feeds that YouTube algo, gives us a little more reach, and it gives us the ability to keep giving out all the content out for free. Now, let's get into the fun. We got a very interesting, very large slate to go over here today. So, 13 games, obviously. A few very high scoring games and a lot of ones right in that kind of middle ground. So I think ownership is kind of getting spread out a little bit. There are a couple interesting spots, but ownership is going to change big time throughout the day. We have the Clippers situation where they made the trade. They have James Harden now. He's out, but the other pieces they got, they're not sure if they're going to play yet. PJ Tucker just said he was playing and he's available tonight. Still waiting on a few others there, but I think the Clippers situation is interesting, which leads us straight into Bones Hyland, who is the highest owned point guard on the slate. I think Bones is very interesting, and I'm definitely going to have some of him. Now, he's the highest owned on FanDuel. Got to move one of these to good old Draftkings here. On Draftkings, he is the second highest owned, and Ben Simmons is the highest. Now, I don't love Ben Simmons in this spot. He isn't a bad play by any means. Spencer Dinwiddie is out. We're not sure if Simmons will start as the one or start at center. So with Dinwiddie being out, that is a question. There is a chance that Sharp starts at center and Simmons starts at the point, or Simmons could still be at the point and, they're just running with Cam Thomas at point guard. So a lot of different ways to go there, and that's going to change ownership. So just pay attention to that. I don't mind Simmons. I just don't love him. He's higher owned, so a reason for me not to like him quite as much. Luka, obviously in a good spot. He's in a very good game environment, or a solid game environment. But the big news is that Kyrie Irving is doubtful. So with that, Luka is likely to score the most fantasy points on the slate. I just don't know if there's quite the value to really make sense to have him in your lineup because he's so expensive. 10.6K is a lot to spend. However, 370 burgers in a row, and if Irving's out, very, very well could be the fourth. And if he's putting up 70, might need to have him, but we'll see here. All right, and then as far as some of the lower owned guys that I like, THT is super interesting to me. The one thing with him is that his minutes have been all over the place. It's probably why his ownership is staying a little lower, but I do like this matchup. We have a high game total. It should be a close game, and he can get fantasy points in a lot of different ways. Points, rebounds, steals, assists, blocks. He can kind of do it all. So I do like him, and I'll go back to the Malcolm Brogdon train as long as he's mid fives. I think it's very likely he's in the 30-point role again. I just think it is a little doubtful for him to get into the 40 area, and that is my only issue with him, is he may lack a little bit of upside because of that. D'Angelo Russell's in a fine spot. Don't mind him. I do like Cam Thomas on DraftKings at 6,600. The dude can score the ball, and the only issue with him is, can he get the ancillary stats? Can he get the rebounds, the assists, steals, whatnot to give you an all-around fantasy day, and that is the question, especially going against Miami, and will he be able to score as well versus Miami? So there's definitely some worry with him, but I like his upside, and probably will play a decent amount of him, at least on DraftKings at that price. Couple other guys I like here. Mike Conley, I just think is still priced a little bit too low. He's another guy that can easily get mid-30s, can get into the 40s on a couple different, on certain games. And he's in a decent matchup. He did well versus them last year. And he will definitely be needed. Trae Young is likely going to be my highest owned point guard. I absolutely love this spot versus the Wizards. I cannot believe he isn't going higher owned. His price is a little bit low. He's a guy that can easily get into the 50s and 60s, and that's what you need here for a 9K player. But I like him a lot today. This Washington team can score some buckets, but they're not very good at stopping buckets. So they're absolutely interesting to me. And then Jamal Murray. I like Jamal Murray. We got a 5-star alert score on him. He's been a very good so far this season. We haven't always needed him to have a good game, which is a little bit of a worry, but I think he's in a decent spot versus the Timberwolves. All right, now let's get over to FanDuel here. So similar, same high-owned guys. Brogdon, Marcus Smart is a guy that I didn't talk about over there. I do not mind him. At 7,100, he's a little expensive on FanDuel, but I still am interested. I think that game environment is good. I like Memphis versus Utah game quite a bit, and I'm going to have, a good amount of those guys. And D'Angelo we talked about. Conley we talked about. All right, so getting over to shooting guard, we got high-owned Shaedon Sharpe, Lonnie Walker, DeJounte Murray. I don't mind Murray. As I've said, I love that game. He can score just like Trae Young can. He doesn't have quite the same upside, but he can do it in a ton of different ways, so he is absolutely interesting. Lonnie Walker is a guy that I had a ton of on Monday night. Luckily, for me, he ended up playing a little bit more and getting there. I still do like him in this spot. I do expect him to play 28-ish minutes, and he's a guy that we've seen in the past right around 0.95 fantasy points per minute, so I think he is interesting in what should be his role tonight. Shaedon Sharpe, I don't mind it, just don't love it. He can have huge blow-up games. That ceiling is there, and that's why I like it. But I think his median outcome just isn't quite what it should be to be as high-owned as he is. So I do have some reservations, but I do like him. Desmond Bane. Look, with Ja out, I'm going to keep going back to Desmond Bane. Dude can score the ball, 50-point upside. He's in a good matchup. He could very easily get that again this game. And look, he had 3 good games versus them last year. So I think Bane is in a very interesting spot, going low owned. And then Kevin Huerter. Huerter on DraftKings is going way too low owned. I absolutely love him. He is one of my highest owned guys. De'Aaron Fox is out. What we have seen in the past when Fox is out, Huerter takes a much bigger role. And I would expect him to do that again tonight. So I like him. I think Dylan Brooks, while I don't really like his game, don't really care for him, I think he's in an interesting enough spot to give him some credit at his price. Very easily could be 6x, and if his shot is falling versus Charlotte, there's a chance for 7x. So I don't mind him. Clarkson, I think, is too cheap. We have not seen him get rolling so far this year. He had a decent game 1 and then just hasn't really done much, but he can definitely get it rolling. One thing I will say, because I like THT also, I don't love the two of them in the same lineup. How they both score fantasy points is with the ball in their hand. And there's not two basketballs to go around. We know Markkanen's going to get his, and then likely THT or Clarkson get theirs. I don't mind Sexton at his price, but I just don't love it because he's got to get lucky to run into extra minutes. All right. And on good old FanDuel, Walker, Herter, Doncic, we like all those. Like White. Poole is very interesting. It is a game environment that I like. I just don't love him at this ownership. He hasn't really put it together so far this year, and he kind of lives and dies by that 3. Brogdon, Bane, Brooks, we talked about. Smart talked about. See if there's anything else here we like that we have not. All right, so shooting guard for today. Highest owned guys, Ben Simmons, Sharp, Walker, same guys we've already talked about. I got to throw in that I do like Lauri Markkanen. I think at 8.4K, he's just a little bit too cheap in a very good game environment, as well as DeMar DeRozan. So there's a lot of guys that are kind of borderline fantasy studs that are just cheap on DraftKings. Markkanen, Butler, DeRozan, there's a few others, and I gotta be pretty interested in those. And those guys are kind of the reason why I don't know how much Doncic I'm gonna get to. I think you can go a little bit medium price today and really get a good sound lineup all around. Harrison Barnes, another guy that I'm interested with. Fox out, his usage goes up. They need him to score a little bit more, and so that's obviously beneficial to him. And on FanDuel side, Jalen Johnson, he is very interesting. I think he's a little higher owned. He's playing extremely good to start the year, but I just don't love it. Royce O'Neal, he's coming off the bench. He's getting some minutes. He's just not a scorer, and he's looking at likely 28 to 32 minutes. He's got to do a lot in that time to really crush his salary at his price. I mean, this is what he's been as a starter, for the Jazz for years, right around this price. And he just isn't that great of a fantasy producer. Grant, I do like Jeremy Grant. The Trailblazers are just a tough spot. They've done a lot of weird things with their rotations, and not sure what's going to happen there. I don't mind him. Don't love him. The Clippers. We talked about it a little bit. Not totally sure what they're doing with the rotations, but I do... I am interested in Norm Powell at least. I do think he's going to get at least 28 minutes. And when the guy is scoring, he can really have a big night. It's just, does it happen tonight or not? And I'm not sure it does tonight. But I do like that game environment as a whole versus the Lakers. And the Clippers might be a little bit shorthanded. We are still waiting for some news on there. So that's one where you're going to have to kind of wait and see. But they are interesting. Kuzma, like Kuzma at 7,400, 1.1 fantasy per minute guy in a very, very high-paced game. He hasn't really had, this Washington team hasn't had this super high-paced game yet, and I think this is a type of game that they will excel in due to how do they play. They don't play that much defense. They get out, run, and gun, and try and score points, and that's what this game is going to be tonight. So I think that game environment is interesting. Another thing that we should talk about here is the Celtics. So the Celtics are giant 11-point favorites on the Pacers. It is the second highest game total of the slate. Now, I don't like to price in blowouts. This game is likely to be a blowout, I would say. Sportsbooks obviously say that, but if the Pacers are able to hang into this game into the fourth, these Celtics players could absolutely crush their salaries. While I don't love them, I'm going to have some of them because there is a chance that as a team, they're putting up 130 points. And obviously for fantasy, that means a lot of fantasy points. So I am intrigued by the Celtics. The one thing with that, again, Pacers are going to need to be able to keep this game close. Not sure if they can, but if they can, I think having one guy on the Pacers, two on the Celtics in a lineup makes a lot of sense. Just don't go overboard with it. They are low owned. You don't need to go all in on them. All right, power forward wise, we got Jalen Johnson, Josh Green, LeBron James as the higher owned guys on DraftKings. Really don't love any of them. I don't mind Jalen Johnson. He's going to project well. He's had some solid games. I think he's going to be, right around that mid 5.5x spot. I just don't know if he truly has a ceiling of 40 plus because he's just meh at scoring the basketball. Josh Green is going to fall into some extra minutes with Irving being out. I just don't love it. I don't think he's that great of a player, and I don't think he has that much of a ceiling. So that's my worry with him. LeBron James, look, his price is coming down, so he is starting to be a little more interesting, but we have big-time minutes worry with him. He's supposed to be on a 30-minute limit, which lasted all but one game. But with that being said, they're not going to be playing him 35 plus consistently. Now, this game is against the Clippers, so maybe this is a game we can count on it. They did take it a little light on him on Wednesday. On Monday. So who knows there? But I just don't love the spot for him, especially at the higher ownership. I use Scar Thompson. Man, I like this kid a lot. I think he's very interesting. He's scoring fantasy points in a ton of different ways. And I think he's going to continue this because, he's hustling. He's getting rebounds, blocks, steals, getting some assists. His scoring just hasn't came around yet. He had 15 points last game, which allowed him to get up to the 40 fantasy points. And at 5.8K versus a poor Trailblazers team, I think it's pretty interesting at medium ownership. Jaren Jackson is another guy that I think should be priced higher. Without Steven Adams, this guy has legit ceiling, could put together 5-6 block games as well with a double-double, and has a good matchup versus the Jazz in a matchup he has done very well in the past. So I like Jaren. Jalen Williams is fine, just doesn't have a huge ceiling. If you're playing him, you need to take some shots on guys that do have that ceiling. Marketing, we went over, like him. Porzingis is another, 8K stud. Should be priced a little bit higher, but he's just not there. He's with the Celtics team. It's going to keep his price a little low all year. But if the Pacers can keep it close, I think he is in a very, very interesting spot. Julius Randle, another one of those guys that has been a very good fantasy contributor. Was crushing all last year in 8.1K. I think you got to be interested in him. He had 19 points last night, which was the high so far of his season. He's a guy that can get you assists, get you rebounds, score in a bunch of different ways. So I like him quite a bit at that price. PJ Washington's probably too cheap. Kawhi Leonard, I think I'm going to get to a lot. Now, I do have to say that is slightly dependent on what happens with the Clippers, but right now I think they're shorthanded tonight. I think he is likely to get 33, 35 minutes versus the Lakers, and he is a guy that can give you 50 at mid 8K, so gotta like that. Isaiah Stewart. All right, so Jalen Duran is questionable. If Duran is out, Stewart could slide into the center position, which is where he has been way more productive in the past if that's the case, I like him a lot tonight. I don't mind him as of now if Durant is starting, and I'm going to be playing him even with Durant. Just really like him if Durant is out. Chet, man, this kid can put up some fantasy points. One thing I will say is these minutes, I don't love them. Now, I think you can only really put him in for 26 minutes right now. But if he happens to have one of those games where he gets into 30 minutes, this kid is going to crush, and this game could stay close enough that this is a 30-minute game. So he is at least interesting to me. Just not going to go out of my way to really get a bunch of him. Jimmy B. Miami have a lot of injury designations today, so pay attention to that injury report because you don't know what's going to happen with them. And it is pretty much the same over on FanDuel, but our highest owned Simmons, Wood, and Royce O'Neal. Wood I am interested in. He can, rebound the ball. He can block the ball very well. And I think he's just an intriguing piece on this team. The thing is that his minutes aren't necessarily always there. We do have Rui Hachimura out today. And so maybe there's a couple more minutes for him to go around today. But what we've seen in the past is he can score fantasy points in bunches. And if he is getting 24 to 28 minutes, like there is absolutely a chance where he is able to break the slate. It's just if that happens tonight or not. Jared Sabonis I like. There's no Fox. Sabonis may have to do a little bit more with the ball, so that's obviously interesting. Kuzma we talked about. Porzingis we talked about. And talked about all these guys. Let's get over to the center spot. So the highest owned guys, Okongwu, Alperen Sengun, and John Collins. Okongwu, I'm not ever chasing his high-owned chalk when Capella is there. The reason being, he's going to get 20 minutes a game, which absolutely kills his upside. I like him as a player. There's solid fantasy upside. I'm just not reaching to put that value in just so I can play Doncic when he's going to be not able to give you big upside to really make Doncic play work. Alperen Sengun, I like it. It's an absolutely great game versus the Hornets, who are bad against center. Sengun is a guy that can do 1.25 fantasy points per minute. So far, 1.4 over his last 5. The dude is good, and he kind of gets used as like a poor man's Jokic, where, he gets the ball on the elbow and has to pass or score or just create the offense around him. So I definitely like him. Collins, I have some worry about upside, but I think he is a fairly safe play. Capella, I like. Just hope, you get a 28-plus minute game and not under. With Okongwu there, his minute, they don't have to play him a lot. It's similar to the Trailblazers with Ayton. We talked about this on Monday. Robert Williams was out, and we weren't sure how many minutes Ayton was going to get because of that. Ayton ended up getting extra minutes and crushed like, I thought he would if he got those extra minutes. Capella just, isn't going to fall into a ton of extra minutes with Okongwu there. Moving down, Mark Williams, absolutely like him. I love, how well he can produce fantasy points. But his minutes have been erratic this season, and if he's getting 30, he's in a smash spot. But the last 2 games, 21 and 23 minutes, does have me a little concerned. Walker Kessler is another minute issue here. 22, 21, 23, then 29. This is a guy last year, and coming into this year, I would have slated for 28 minutes, 28 to 30. every single game. So I'm not totally sure what was going on those first 3 games, but I have to take that data and kind of do something with him. So I have some reservations, but he's a guy that can score a lot of fantasy points. 1.13 over his last 20 starts. Over the last 5, only 0.84. But he is a very good fantasy producer, can get rebounds, block the ball, scores points. So I like his upside. Just big time worries if those minutes are consistent or not. He is a guy that if he's high owned right now, I'm probably not playing it. Low ownership, I'm willing to take some shots. Rudy Gobert, absolutely interested in playing him tonight in a good spot versus Jokic. Vucevic, he's just too cheap still. He showed you his upside last game versus the Pacers, 50 points. And it's somebody, if he's in the 7Ks, I'm going to just have to keep going back to. DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams is expected back. He played 32 minutes last night, Monday. That was without Robert Williams. With him, he's in that 20 to 30 range, with only one game getting to 30. The other 2 low 20s. I expect him to be more in that 24 to 28 range. But he could crush in this matchup if they're going back to him that 30 point range, which there's a chance, they might. They did get the win versus Toronto with him playing extra. He is definitely their best NBA player at this point in everybody's career. Jacob Poeltl is another guy we need to bring up here. So he can produce very well for fantasy. His minutes have been all over the place. Precious Achiuwa was out last game. He played a couple extra minutes. Achiuwa is going to be out again tonight, so I think there is some interest. And Poeltl, I do have a little bit concerned that it is against the Nets, but the Bucks. But the Bucks have been letting guys score and keeping games close as they try and figure that out with Lillard and Giannis. Mitchell Robinson is another guy minute-wise. I mean, this is kind of who he has been the last couple of years, where when he gets the minutes, he produces. When he doesn't, he just sucks. If those minutes are there, I like him and like his price at low ownership. And getting over to FanDuel, it is more of the same. Pretty much all the same guys we like. The high-owned guys are very similar, being Jaren, Wood, and Sengun. Okongwu just isn't there, which he shouldn't be. But that will do it for us today, guys. I think it's going to be a very interesting slate. Should be a fun one. And let's win some money. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our videos. And if you like what you see from our platform, we are available on website and app. Come join us. Only $39.99 per month. Have a good one, guys. I'll be back on Friday, I think. I think tomorrow's another small slate. Have a good one, guys. Bye.